Good morning, everyone. Today I will be playing in the Kaldheim Championship Modern Qualifier with my Azorius turns list. Now I know that a lot of people would prefer to see me play Tron. I played Tron in the Modern Showcase Challenge. It did not do very good because at the top level of the metagame it has a lot of bad matchups. So I decided I would do things today on my own terms, and my own terms involve Time Warp. So we'll see how we do. Who knows? Maybe we do good, maybe we don't. I am going to keep this. We just need to find one of our 6 Howling Mine effects or a Teferi, and should be fine. Opponent is on a Godless Shrine deck, so this could be Stoneblade. Opponent can take Giga Drowse or Serum Visions. And we are going to start Polluted Delta almost 100%. Okay, they take Serum Visions. They do not want us modifying our top decks. We untap, we draw Park the Water Veil, which is not what we wanted to draw, but if we make it to the combo stage of the game, we're going to absolutely win. We have 3 Time Warps in hand. Alright, opponent's going to Thoughtseize us. That's fine. I was debating about Giga Drowsing my opponent this turn to prevent them from casting something like a... Alright, I have no idea what my opponent's doing, but they're getting a Sunbeam Spellbomb. Is this eggs? That would be something if this was eggs. I'm having my first coffee of the morning. My opponent might field me here. Another Sunbeam Spellbomb. It can gain them 5 life or draw them a card. Interesting. Well, play me Kokoro, pass the turn. We do just need to draw a Dictate of Krufix. I really wish I knew what my opponent was playing. It feels like it's gotta be eggs. Silent Clearing. Elspeth, Sun's Nemesis. Maybe this is just, like a Stoneblade, Pox, weird style of deck. I think drawing my opponent cards here is probably pretty bad, but we need to draw cards also very bad. Howling Mine. Alright. Yeah, I think now is as good of a time as ever. Play Howling Mine. Play Hallowed Fountain tapped. And if we untap, we go off. If we untap with all of our permanents intact, we go off. Oh man. I think I need to do some stretches. Cavern. Angel? We get Thoughtseized. I think the only concern would be if my opponent had a main deck Surgical, which, at this point, I'm not ruling anything out. Opponent takes a Time Warp. Inquisitions, takes Exhaustion. Resplendent Angel. So this is like... I think this is the Angel Tribal deck. There used to be a Boros Angel Tribal deck that played Resplendent Angel and a whole bunch of other random things. Okay, Mystic Sanctuary here is incredibly nice. So play Mystic Sanctuary, put Time Warp on top of the deck. Time Warp. Like, we should have this game. Alright. Flooded Strand. Crack Flooded Strand. Get a Mystic Sanctuary. Put Time Warp on top of the deck. Time Warp ourself. Okay. Untap, draw Time Warp and something else. Serum Visions. Play an island. Serum Visions. We draw an island. Force of Negation, Dictate of Krufix to the bottom. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I am going to cast Park the Water Veil here, though that does take us off of winning faster. It's less risky, because next turn what we can do is we can flash in Dictate on our upkeep, draw extra cards. Now we play an island and Time Warp. Untap. Draw a bunch of cards. Alright. Play Flooded Strand. Get our last Mystic Sanctuary. Put Time Warp on top of the deck. Play Teferi. Bounce the token. Path the Resplendent Angel. Time Warp ourself. Draw a bunch of cards. Uptick Teferi. We're in a little bit of trouble. Opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands, 7, 8 permanents. We'd have to tap. We could tap everything, except 1 permanent if I wanted to activate Mikokoro, which I think I'm fine doing. We'll play Prairie Stream. Pass the turn. Stop on my opponent's upkeep. Giga Drowse. Replicated 6 times. Okay. We'll tap there, tap there. Tap their plains, tap Cavern, tap Godless Shrine, tap Silent Clearing. So we've only kind of fizzled a little bit, but we're in a position that we should win from pretty easily. I now understand the Sunbeam Spellbomb being a cantrip or gaining 5 life. Okay. Opponent chose not to sack Spellbomb or Silent Clearing. They're going to draw some cards. If something crazy happens, we'll just force pitching force. Lone Rider. Okay. Yeah, so this actually looks like black-white life gain, I think. Okay, activate Mikokoro. Untap, draw a bunch of cards. I sort of regret pitching, that Part the Water Veil, but this doesn't normally happen. Alright, gonna discard Hollowed Fountain. Okay, on my opponent's upkeep, let's go ahead and Giga Drowse 5 permanents, because I want to flash a Dictate. Oh, hang on. So it's only replicated 4 times. So we'll tap Lone Rider. We are drawing a lot of cards. Maybe I shouldn't actually flash Dictate of Krufix. We can make that decision on their end step. We don't have to do that now. So hit Lone Rider, hit a token, hit a token. We'll tap Cavern and Silent Clearing. Opponent fields me Kokoro. Okay. Get an island. Okay, Giga Drowse is going to resolve. Alright. Opponent gets to draw some extra cards. They draw Castle Lochthwain, which they could activate for half of their life total. Alright, opponent has a Lyra Dawnbringer. Man, I don't know about casting this Dictate. I guess we could always bounce it with Teferi if it's a problem, but... Untap, draw a bunch of cards. We get a Jace, so... Play Jace. Brainstorm. Okay, I feel a lot better about myself now. We'll put back Island, Prairie Stream, play Misty Rainforest. Crack Misty Rainforest. Get an island. I think we're gonna Snapcaster Time Warp. Time Warp ourself. And I'm actually going to use Teferi to bounce a Dictate of Krufix, I think. Because I don't want to draw that many cards now. We draw Temporal Mastery, so we will have a warp for next turn. We can unsummon Lyra Dawnbringer and start beating down. So on our end step, discard Dictate, Dictate, untap. Only draw 3 cards this time. Play Prairie Stream. Yeah, we'll just unsummon Lyra. Time Warp ourself. Time Warp ourself again. So we have 2 turns in queue. This way we don't have to discard. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Pass the next turn. I suppose I should turn off auto yields in case I need to force. When it gains 5 life, that's fine. If they transform Lone Rider, we untap. First extra turn. Play Teferi. Unsummon a Dictate. Draw Teferi. Brainstorm with Jace. Man, where is our other Part the Water Veil? Put back Temporal, I guess. Play a Plains. Go to combat. Attack for 2. We have nothing we can speed up the clock with right now. So pass the turn, we'll discard our Howling Mine effects. Cantrip. Force that we don't need. Okay, last extra turn. Miracle Temporal. Cast it. We draw Temporal. So let's Serum Visions. We draw Exhaustion. There's Part the Water Veil. Okay. Brainstorm. Put back Temporal. Awaken the Plains. Go to combat. Beat down. Discard an island. Untap. Will not reveal Temporal Master. We don't need to. Draw an extra card. And with 3 cards left in our library, kill our opponent. Ooh, that was like the worst Time Warp variance we've had in a long time. Okay, so versus these creature decks, we definitely want Verdicts. Force of Negation is not as good. I'm going to go down to 1. I'm not willing to cut it completely, I think. Silence could be good, because our opponent does play at mostly sorcery speed. I think I don't want to cut Jace. Actually, I'm going to cut Force of Negation entirely. We'll bring a path in. I could actually cut it to Teferi here as well. We might want a Timely Reinforcements. In fact, we Probably do. Question is, what do I cut for a timely reinforcements? Slash, would it be better as like a brazen borrower, because my opponent makes big tokens? Well, timely reinforcements, they're going to have more life than us the majority of the game, and they probably are going to have a creature of some kind. Let's just try it like this. I don't think I need timely here. Timely's better when... Timely's a really good card, but timely is better when your opponent is... Alright, I'll keep this. 3 Serum Visions go. I'll put Part the Water Veil back, because we're probably going to get Thought Seized. The timely is better when your opponent runs out of steam quickly, like Burn, and they're trying to, like, just go super fast, and... Alright, Serum Visions number 1. We draw Mikokoro. We will put Temporal and Flooded Strand on top of Temporal. This means we are not casting a Serum Visions next turn. Okay, opponent plays a Godless Shrine. They play Maze Mind Tome. I like it. Play Mikokoro. Pass the turn. The only way our opponent could disrupt this Temporal Mastery is if my opponent Field of Ruins us, which wouldn't be the end of the world. Okay, they play a Plains. They play a Lone Rider. So we're probably going to get hit by a 4/4 Lone Rider very quickly. Okay, they transform It That Rides as 1. We Miracle a Temporal, play Flooded Strand, fetch up a basic island. Now we cast a Serum Visions. We draw Time Warp. Time Warp to the bottom. Snow-covered island to the top. We do want to draw lands. Okay, we untap, draw Snow-covered island, play it. Serum Visions, draw another island. Island to the bottom. We'll put island to the bottom as well. So we're going to Flash Dictate. Hopefully my opponent does not have multiple Thought Seizes. They scry with Maze Mind Tome. I will have to play very fast in case we go to a game 3 here, because game 1 took so long. They attack us for 4, we take 4, they go up to 25, we go down to 13. Inquisition. So we do Flash Dictate. We can F6 now. They can't take anything with Inquisition. I guess if they have enchantment removal, that would be the worst. Rest in peace. Okay, well we don't need the Grave. It just makes it easier. So we untap, we draw multiple cards, one of which is a Serum Visions, the next card is an island. So play an island, cast Time Warp, here we go. F6 to next turn. We untap, we draw Path, okay, we draw Giga Drowse, play an island, Serum Visions, draw Part the Water Veil, and Silence. I think I leave Silence on top, actually. Time Warp. Pass, we untap. Draw Teferi. Wish I had another white source. We will play Teferi. Bounce It That Rides as 1. Draw another Teferi. Pass the turn. Opponent scries on their upkeep. We let them untap, so we're going to Giga Drowse our opponent, replicating twice, making sure to click all of their lands. Now we F6. Our opponent cannot respond to the Giga Drowse. They have to play on their main phase. They could use the mana to draw an extra card and gain 4 life. That's fine. Okay. They draw an extra card. Worst case scenario is a Thought Seize for us. They don't have it. Or at least they don't use it. We untap, we draw a Flooded Strand and a Flooded Strand. So uptick to Fairy, Flooded Strand, we will fetch up a Prairie Stream, play to Fairy, keep the new one, bounce Rest in Peace. So now we can actually start going for the Mystic Sanctuary plays if we need to. Silence them on their upkeep, because they can't respond due to Fairy. They can't play any spells this turn. They can play a land, though. Alright, on their end step, we'll go ahead and Mikokoro, which will force them to discard, but gives us an extra card. We get an Exhaustion. Not going to be super useful here for us. Alright, well, they discard a Sunbeam Spellbomb, we draw a Flooded Strand, we draw an extra card. It's an Exhaustion. So, uptick to Fairy, play Flooded Strand, crack Flooded Strand, get a Mystic Sanctuary, putting Silence on top of our deck, cast Temporal Mastery, go to our next turn, we untap, we draw Silence and one other card. It is a Prairie Stream, play Prairie Stream, uptick to Fairy. We do have 9 mana, so we will Awaken We're actually going to awaken a basic island here. This is strategic because our opponent has Field of Ruins in their deck, and even if we have to silence warp them, they could still Field of Ruin, potentially. This wouldn't play around a Ghost Quarter, but at least we have a way to start beating down now. We draw a Mystic Sanctuary, uptick to Fairy, draw an extra card. It's a Jace. Hallowed Fountain tapped, play Jace. Brainstorm. Alright, put back Misty, put back to Fairy. Go to combat, hit them for 6, stop on their upkeep, discarding an Exhaustion. On their upkeep, silence. Okay? They get to draw an extra card. But I think with Warp and Mystic Sanctuary, and potentially an extra Mystic Sanctuary off of Flooded Strand, I think we got there. Opponent has to discard down to 7. We have to win this game, because like going to game 3 here, we probably will not have time. Our opponent gaining life is kind of difficult for us. So let's play fast. Time Warp ourselves. Play Mystic Sanctuary. Time Warp on top. Uptick Jace. Uptick to Fairy. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Next turn, we draw Time Warp. Time Warp ourselves. Play Misty. Crack Misty. Get a Mystic Sanctuary. Time Warp on top. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Opponent goes to 11. Uptick to Fairy. Uptick Jace. No. Pass the turn. Untap. Draw Time Warp. Draw Snapcaster. So Time Warp ourselves. And I think that does it. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Hit them to 5. Next turn. We untap. Draw Time Warp Howling Mine. Go to combat. Attack them for 6. So we cast the same Time Warp 4 or 5 times. Woo! And we win the match. Alright. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed round 1. I'll see you guys in round 2 whenever that happens. I'll be taking breaks in between games to give my brain a rest, so see you there. Alrighty, round 2, here we go. Would love to play first. Only thing bad about this hand is a Temporal Mastery, and if we actually resolve Jace, it's not that bad. The worst part of this hand is the fact that we're not playing anything until at least turn 3. And the other worst part about this hand is the fact that we have to start tap land into fetch land, though that's probably not going to matter because we're on the play, so it's not like our opponent, if they're Death and Taxes, could play Leon and Arbiter or something like that. Alright, here we go. Opponent mulligan to 5. Okay, Prairie Stream, pass the turn. Opponent draws up to 6. Tron. Probably of the green variety. And it would appear that our opponent really shelled out for the expensive Tron lands. And they're going to be turn 3 Tron, it looks like. I'm going to fetch with Flooded Strand, we'll get an island, and I am going to cast Temporal Mastery here, just to get a redraw. Okay, opponent cracks map. We really need to hit a land. Okay, next turn, we draw Giga Drowse, which at the very least lets us interact with what our opponent is doing. So stop on their upkeep, Giga Drowse them replicated 1 time. The good news is, versus our opponent's deck, Silence is amazing, because Tron plays almost exclusively at sorcery speed, with the exception of, like, Warping Whale. Second tower, so opponent is going to have 10 mana next turn. They do have an Urza's Mine. We draw Force of Negation. Alright, not hitting this third land is pretty punishing here. If it's anything but Ulamog, we're going to force it. But with my luck, it's probably Ulamog. Alright, 4 mana for Karn, Great Creator. Force, pitching Temporal. Gonna crack Star for green. Okay, hits nothing. Which means they didn't have a 6 mana or less play. No! We have cantrips and everything in this deck. Alright. Here's presumably where we get wrecked. So even now, if we draw a land, opponent just Liquid Metal Coatings us, and we don't have a force, so... This is turn 7? What? Alright, well, we can at least, fight through 1 instance of land destruction here by flashing in a Dictate. If we draw an untapped land, we could play Teferi and bounce Liquid Metal Coating, but that doesn't really do anything. Okay, they blow up the Prairie Stream. We'd have to Miracle our 3rd Temporal Mastery while hitting a land. Yeah, okay. Gross. Absolutely disgusting. Okay, so we're going to drop Path, bring in Silence. Don't think I actually want Aether Gust. We may want Brazen Borrower. Question is, what are we dropping for what we have? I actually do kind of like Force of Negation in this matchup. Teferi is not as good. I think I can cut one Teferi and maybe a Serum Visions here. And we'll try it like this. Not having Path, we might actually get punished for by not being able to answer like a Wormcoil Engine or something like that. But we can Teferi unsummon or Jace unsummon, so it's not, or Cryptic Bounce if we absolutely have to. Which are not impossible situations to get to, but I guess we'll find out. That was pretty bad, though. I guess maybe no. Had I forced the Liquimetal Coating, they could have wished for Liquimetal Coating, so forcing Karn was correct. I guess the good news is that was a fast loss, so we still have a lot of clock for our remaining 2 games. I think the worst would be if we comboed out, fizzled, and then we wouldn't have enough time. It's kind of a risk playing this deck. But in the general case, I've not had much trouble with Tron playing this deck. We usually wail on him pretty hard. This is another 2-land hand, but at the same time, we also have multiple Giga Drows and a Force of Negation. So keeping here should be fine. If my opponent starts with a map hand, we can actually Giga Drows to stop them from cracking map for a turn. Opponent is taking their time with their mulligans. Actually, we could force the map, which would be bad only if they didn't have another tutor. I should probably focus on countering the threats, though. We can Giga Drows to delay and save Force for a threat. I feel like that's gotta be correct. Because, I mean, like, that's what happened to us the other day when we were playing Tron. Opponent spent time countering all the land tutors, and we just had Tron in hand, so... Alright, opponent starts Mine, Map. Okay, fetch with Flooded Strand, let's get a Hollowed Fountain. Probably actually should have gotten a Prairie Stream, but... Yep, that's why. So... Oh, I should have played Prairie Stream! Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Everything is fine. Tap the Urza's Mine. Okay. Opponent plays a Power Plant and another map. We untap and draw Time Warp. Oh, that was a big misplay. Really hope that doesn't come back to bite me. Okay, we'll let them crack map this turn, / leave up Force. They play an Urza's Mine. They play a Relic. Okay, that's interesting. I would have anticipated something else. We could Giga Drowse here, but it makes us exile a card, so we'll exile Flooded Strand. We could Giga Drowse here and force them to crack map, which would give us a target for Teferi Bounce, and then we would still have Force. No, let's save Giga Drowse. Okay, another Time Warp is not great. Problem is, if I target anything with Teferi Bounce now, they will, they'll just crack that. I mean, it could bounce the Relic, but we're gonna go no targets bounce. I need to draw land here, if possible. Silence is good. Okay, opponent cracks map, gets a tower. They can't play Ulamog, and we can answer anything that's not a creature. Like Karn Liberated. So, force Karn. I'm going to pitch Giga Drowse because we now have Silence. I would really like to draw land for Cryptic Command. / a Dictate, maybe. Another Teferi. So, uptick Teferi. We have to silence our opponent. Exile Force, we don't need it. Opponent cracks map to get a land here. Basic Forest. Okay. Think I gotta go with the Silence. Okay, they exile Giga Drowse, that's fine. They play Blast Zone. Okay. It gives them something to do about Teferi. Okay, Flooded Strand is nice. So, play Flooded Strand. We need to tick up Teferi. Okay. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays Karn, Great Creator. This is fine. We're gonna let them play Karn. Now the concern is if they play Forest and have mana for Veil to protect whatever they get. If they go for Liquimetal Coating, obviously we counter Liquimetal Coating. Sundering Titan. Okay. Opponent goes for a big Sundering Titan play here. I don't think we get Mystic Sanctuary. We need to draw another land very badly. So, get an island, counter, and draw. Opponent can then crack Relic to put it into the exile zone, so that they can wish for it again, which is pretty punishing. Alright, well we get another Mystic Sanctuary. So, Mystic Sanctuary will attempt to put Silence on top of our deck. This should make them crack Relic. Yep, that's fine. We didn't actually want Silence on top of our deck, I don't think. We have at least a couple of turns here. Teferi will get us a couple of extra draws because we don't have a Howling Mine, which is fine. Alright. Untap. We draw and Miracle Temporal Mastery, which is great. Down tick Teferi to draw a card. Draw Part the Water Veil. Okay. So, Mystic Sanctuary, putting Time Warp on top of our deck. Play a new Teferi. Down tick to draw a card. Okay. Untap. Let's see what we draw. Exhaustion. Exhaustion is a pseudo Time Warp here. Because we are going to need... I think we're going to need this Part the Water Veil to win. I'm going to use a regular Time Warp here instead of my most expensive Warp strategy. We untap. I would like to draw a Dictate of Kruphix so that I can exhaust my opponent and get a warp that way. Howling Mine works too. So uptick to Fairy. Play Howling Mine. Exhaust my opponent. Pass the turn. So opponent gets to draw an extra card. They could wish for a Liquid Metal Coating or a Trinisphere, which would be a big deal. But we will have Teferi bounce after a warp. They can shut off one land for one turn, but we have Time Warp and 6 lands, so we should be fine. And I think we'll be out of this okay. If we have a set of like 4 to 6 really bad top decks, we'll lose. That's not super likely, but it is possible. We know our opponent is holding a forest. I guess they could uptick Karn on Howling Mine and dismember it, which would suck, actually, a lot. Okay, opponent plays Forest and Ancient Stirrings. They get a Chromatic Star. So let's see if they wish or what they do. They just uptick Karn, no targets. Okay. We untap, we draw a couple cards. Island and Force. So uptick to Fairy, play an Island, Time Warp ourself. We're so close to Part the Water Veil here that I think I just have to hold it. We draw an Exhaustion. So down tick, no targets to Fairy. Serum Visions. Let's cast a Serum Visions. Dictate and Mystic Sanctuary. Okay, we need to draw that land next turn. Dictate is fine, but I think we just want the Mystic Sanctuary. So play a Snow-Covered Island. Exhaust our opponent. And now we have hard cast Force, if there's a problem. Opponent gets to draw an extra card. But we should be able to play Mystic Sanctuary, Part the Water Veil, and then we have a Time Warp as well. So we untap, draw Mystic Sanctuary, Jace the Mind Sculptor, uptick to Fairy, Mystic Sanctuary, put Time Warp on top of our deck, awaken Mystic Sanctuary here. And the reason we're doing that is because there might be a situation where we need to uptick to Fairy to unsummon. So we draw Time Warp, we draw Island, uptick to Fairy, play Jace, Brainstorm, put back Mikokoro, Temporal Mastery, Time Warp ourself, go to combat, attack our opponent. Next turn, we untap, we Miracle Temporal, get a Time Walk, draw Mikokoro, uptick to Fairy, Brainstorm with Jace, putting back Teferi, Prairie Stream, play Flooded Strand, crack Flooded Strand, get Mystic Sanctuary, put Time Warp on top of our deck, Time Warp ourself, go to combat, attack our opponent. We should have plenty of warps in queue, so yeah, we'll just Time Warp and attack twice. Okay. Nice. Do we want to make any adjustments for game 3? We need to draw lands. Which, I mean, I suppose we should put, like, Serum Visions back in the deck because we're struggling with it so hard, but I don't know. Silence did work there. Alright. I think I just run it back. I'm not going to make any adjustments. Opponent is on the play, which is a big deal. Alright, well, we have Serum Visions, Giga Drowse, and Exhaustion, so we'll keep. We do need to get a Howling Mine down at some point, so hopefully the Serum Visions is good draws. A Temporal Mastery early off of the Serum Visions would be great. Opponent starts Urza's Mine, Expedition Map. We draw Cryptic Command. Play Snow-Covered Island, Serum Visions. We draw Dictate. Do I want Jace? I actually don't think I want Jace. I'm not going to be able to cast him for a long time. And of course our Scry is only setting up our next turn. Opponent cracks map, gets tower. So we untap. Unfortunately, we cannot Miracle Temporal Mastery. Play Flooded Strand. Fetch Flooded Strand. We will get a Snow-Covered Island. Stop on our opponent's upkeep. Giga Drowse them. Replicated once. Tap both their lands. They will only have 3 mana this turn. They play a Forest instead and Ancient Stirrings. Okay? If we can Miracle another Temporal, we should be in a much better place. I would really feel better with a free counterspell as well. Okay. Silence is good. Silence means we can exhaust this turn. We'll get a Prairie Stream. Exhaust our opponent. So next turn we can silence our opponent on their upkeep, play Dictate, and put Exhaustion back on top of our deck. Or probably Giga Drowse, actually. 3 mana, opponent can play map and crack it. Okay, so they played these. They have another tower. So opponent will have not be able to cast spells because we have to silence. We untap. We draw another silence. Exhaustion is not good without Giga Drowse. Giga Drowse is the closest thing we have to a warp right now. So I think putting Giga Drowse back here is actually fine. So stop on our opponent's upkeep. Silence. Okay? They can play a land, but they can't do anything else. Man, 1 mana Time Warp here is really saving us, let me tell you. Because if this was anything else, we wouldn't be able to play Dictate, and we need to play Dictate to even have a chance at winning. Okay, stop on my opponent's end step. Flash Dictate. That's right. Okay, we need to draw... I put Giga Drowse on top, didn't I? We need to draw land. Oof. Okay. So the problem now is... Yeah, I shouldn't have put Giga Drowse on top. If my opponent has like a Krosan Grip or something, we're in trouble. Could Cryptic be enough to save us? They're threatening instant speed action. They have mana for like Veil plus Ulamog. I think we just have to Giga Drowse. If they have removal for Dictate, that's super bad for us, but there's nothing we can really do about it. They would have to have interaction, no bombs, which with 5 cards in hand and an Ancient Stirrings cast is basically impossible. There's no reason our opponent would take a Tron land over a threat if they had the option. So we'll tap the Forest and both towers. Okay, we can F6. If my opponent has another Tron land, they could play Karn this turn, which would be bad. They cycled Wilt. Oh, maybe they have a second Wilt. Or that was a mistake. Okay, opponent plays an Urza's Mine. They play Chromatic Sphere. They crack for green. Do they have a second Wilt? Ancient Stirrings. Okay. I think that was a mistake. If opponent lets us untap with his Dictate, they are in trouble. Okay, because now if we draw Exhaust, we can warp them with that. Draw Flooded Strand, Temporal Mastery. Play Flooded Strand. Crack it. We will get Mystic Sanctuary. Put... I think at this point just silence on top. Because now we can silence them on their upkeep with Cryptic backup. We've drawn all of our most expensive warps. So stop on my opponent's upkeep. Silence. Okay, that worked. They play a tower, which we knew they had. We untap and we're going to draw silence and something else. Another Dictate, okay? So this is better because now we can protect ourselves from a Wilt. Stop on our opponent's upkeep. Silence them. Okay. Opponent does draw an extra card. Play another Urza's Mine. Move to their end step. Flash in a Dictate. Well, opponent has to discard. We need to draw a Time Warp. If we draw a Time Warp, I think this game is over. Not technically, but it's very, very close. Opponent discards Sylvan Scrying. Draw Hallowed Fountain, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and Giga Drowse. We can Giga Drowse almost all of their mana, which I guess is our best bet. Oh, I don't like this. But it might be our only chance. Okay. Oh, the problem is if they have Veil of Summer, we are screwed. Giga Drowse replicated 5 times. Here we go. Okay, we hit their green mana. Tower, 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 mine, and mine. F6. Oh, man. Let's see what they got. If they can't interact with our mana and we draw a land, we win. Because we're taking like 10 turns in a row. Oh, man. Opponent cycling that Wilt instead of casting it definitely hurt them. I think that was a critical mistake, and it may have lost them the game. But, like, if they play... Okay, 6 mana. What is this? Walking Ballista X3. Okay, that doesn't do it. Alright, land. We draw Force, land, Mystic. Okay. Play Snow-Covered Island. Temporal Mastery. Next turn. We untap. We draw Exhaustion, Island, Cryptic. Play an Island. Temporal Mastery. Next turn. We untap. Draw Snapcaster, Silence, Serum Visions. Cast Serum Visions. We draw Time Raveler, which is great. Land to the bottom. Land to the bottom. Temporal Mastery. Next turn. Pass turn. Discarding Cryptic. And at this point, probably Jace the Mind Sculptor. But I'm not 100% on that, so I'm going to discard Force of Negation. Okay, we untap. Draw Teferi, land Dictate. Okay. Play Teferi. Unsummon Ballista. This should probably kill Teferi. Yep. Now, do they ping us, or do they let it bounce? They're going to ping us. They're not going to let us draw cards. Well, they could still... Yep, okay. They're not going to let us draw cards. So we don't draw a card. Now we shock Hollowed Fountain, go to 11, play Teferi, and I think we just exhaust our opponent. Wait, hang on. I played a land, right? Yeah, okay. Exhaust our opponent, and we're going to uptick Teferi. If we downtick, they could have like another Walking Ballista, and that would be a problem. So they can potentially play one land, and whatever they can play off of one land. But I don't think that's going to matter now. Probably should not have discarded Force of Negation like I did, okay? It's just an Ancient Stirrings, it's nothing we have to worry about. Thankfully. We need to draw Park the Water Veil so we can win quickly. Okay, opponent gets an Urza's Tower. We untap. Opponent has to discard 2 cards. Now Silence is a true Time Warp. Opponent discards Kozilek. Okay, they shuffle everything back in. Well, it's not like we're winning by milling them out. Giga Drowse, Time Warp, Mystic Sanctuary. Play Time Warp. Mystic Sanctuary, put back Time Warp, play Jace, and I guess we could Fate Seal them. We could just start ticking up Jace for the kill. Down tick Teferi and draw. Okay, we draw Time Warp. Next turn, draw Howling Mine, Snow-Covered Plains, Time Warp ourself, Mystic Sanctuary, Time Warp on top, uptick Teferi, uptick Jace. Not putting it on the bottom. Snapcaster Exhaust. Untap. Draw Time Warp. We have no more Mystic Sanctuaries. Time Warp, Force Negation, Serum Visions. Uptick Teferi, or uptick Jace on our opponent. We will not put it on the bottom. Uptick Teferi. Play a land. Play a Time Warp. Cast a Serum Visions, because we are looking for Park the Water Veil, if we can get it. Go to combat, attack our opponent for 2, discard Flooded Strand. Alright, untap, draw a bunch of cards. Howling Mine, Polluted Delta, Island. We did exhaust our opponent. Bounce Dictate. We get a Time Warp. Uptick Jace. We will not put Expedition Map on the bottom. Time Warp ourself. Go to combat. Attack with Snapcaster for 2. Go to next turn. Discard Dictate, Howling Mine, Dictate. Okay, we untap. Draw Teferi. Uptick Jace. No. Play an Island. Play Teferi. Keep the new one. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Bounce Snapcaster. Awaken Prairie Stream. Untap. I'll discard Force, Giga Drowse. Oh, or just whatever we ended up clicking on there. Okay, we untap. We draw another Part the Water Veil, play an Island. Alt Jace, because we can. Oh, I may have lagged out the game. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Moto. And opponent scoops it up. Nice! I'll see you guys in round 3. Alrighty, round 3, here we go. We are on the play. Oof. This is not a bad hand, but we do have better 6s, because that was basically a mull to 5. Double Prairie Stream opener is also not great, but it is way better. I'm going to put back Snapcaster Mage, and we will start Prairie Stream tapped past the turn. This is kind of like the traditional decent Time Warp hand. Okay, opponent starts Blooming Marsh, nothing else. Okay, we draw Giga Drowse. Serum Visions to get more information. We draw Temporal Mastery, unfortunately. Serum Visions and Force of Negation to the bottom. We would really like a land here. Okay, opponent plays a Strangle Root Geist. This could be the Yogg deck. Okay, pass the turn, no third land. Second Dictate makes me feel comfortable not Giga Drowsing here if my opponent has hand hate. They attack us for 2 again. They play a Verdant Catacombs, crack Verdant Catacombs, get a Swamp. Giralf's Messenger. Yes, this is definitely the Yawgmoth's will, or not will, Yawgmoth's Thrawn Physician infinite combo, it looks like. Another Strangle Root Geist. Okay, we are going to Giga Drowse X2 to mitigate some of the damage here. We really need to draw lands, like unbelievably need to draw untapped lands. Take 2, go to 12. Opponent plays a Dryad Arbor. We untap, draw Snow-Covered Plains, which is not what I want, but it at least is going to allow us to cast Dictate of Kruphix. And if my opponent has Yawgmoth Thrawn Physician, we just lose. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage. We'll take 8 and go to 4. I think we need to Miracle a Temporal Mastery as well as get a land. A blue land might be enough to keep us alive. Opponent plays Urborg. That is exactly what I didn't want to see. And we just die. Opponent, I believe, has the infinite combo here. Yeah. Okay. Well, we definitely want paths. And we probably want Aether Gusts. Force of Negation does not do much versus an almost entirely creature-based combo. Giga Drowse doesn't do much either, so I'm going to cut Giga Drowse for Path, basically. Cut Force for Aether Gust, and I guess we'll try it like this. I might want Brazen Borrower, but we'll see. Luckily, the loss was a fast loss, so our clock does not take too much. I'm really surprised that with 24 lands and a stack of Serum Visions, we cannot draw lands to save our life. Now, I could have Giga Drowsed my opponent's lands that last turn, but if I did that, I wasn't casting Dictate, and if I wasn't casting Dictate, I wasn't winning, pretty much regardless. Supreme Verdict, obviously, is not going to be very good versus a deck with all the creatures having Undying, which is why we're doing the Path thing here. Alright, we'll play first. 1 mana, but we have Aether Gust and Path and everything we could want. I'm going to keep this, hopefully off of the strength of Serum Visions. We'll see. We just have to find lands 2 and 3, and land number 3 needs to come in untapped. So start Hollowed Fountain, Serum Visions. Snow-Covered Plains, Serum Visions to the bottom, Flooded Strand to the top. We are in business. Opponent starts Overgrown Tomb. Birds of Paradise. Alright, you got it. We draw Flooded Strand, play Flooded Strand, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Forest. 2 mana for a Strangle Root Geist, so we are going to fetch up a basic island and Aether Gust Strangle Root. See if they put it on top or on bottom. They put it on top. And they play a Noble. Okay. We untap, play Snow-Covered Plains, pass the turn. We will be flashing Dictate this turn. Pretty much regardless, unless my opponent somehow sets up the combo. Okay, they play Strangle Root. They play Pendelhaven. They go to combat. Attack us for 3. Okay, let's hope for no Abrupt Decay. Assassin's Trophy wouldn't be as bad, because we would get a land out of the deal, but... Untap. We draw land, which is great, and Cryptic, which is also good. Alright, pass the turn. For those of you that don't know what the combo is, with enough Undying creatures, Yawgmoth basically becomes like an infinite draw engine, at which point they can just go get the kill. But they can also just recycle Giralf's Messenger enough times to kill you. Okay, opponent hits us for 3, we go to 11. They play Young Wolf, that's fine, and a tap land. Okay, on their end step, I'm going to tap all their creatures and draw a card. This way, if we get Exhaust, we took out 2 of their mana. Opponent could Collected Company, I guess. They could also, like, Chord for a 2-drop. We just need to draw a land, and we are off to the Time Warp races. Okay, they are Chording. X2. Could be Kasali Pride Mage. If it's Gaddock Teague, we're probably boned. Though we do have a Path to Exile, we would have to draw Exhaustion, I think. Okay, it's Scavenging Ooze, because they know we use the Grave. We draw Howling Mine, untap, draw Prairie Stream, Aether Gust, play Prairie Stream, and Time Warp. Okay, untap, draw Dictate, Giga Drowse. Oh, we needed a land. We needed a land so bad. What do we do here? Well, we have Path, we have Aether Gust. So I guess we pass the turn. Opponent gets to untap. We could Giga Drowse all of their black sources, so they can't Yawgmoth. We could also just Aether Gust and Path the guys they would sack to Yawgmoth. Aether Gust wouldn't do it, actually. Crap. Well, I guess we'll find out if we die. That was a mistake. Opponent goes to combat. They can attack for 5. 6 with Pendelhaven. Alright, no blocks. Go to 6. Messenger down to 4. Okay. Alright, pass to their end step. We're going to Aether Gust, Scavenging Ooze, to potentially allow us to Mystic Sanctuary. Veil of Summer. Okay, opponent gets to draw a card. We flash Dictate. Alright, untap. Draw a bunch of cards. One of which is a land, thankfully. Play a land, cast the first part of the Water Veil just as a Time Warp here. Okay, next turn. We untap, draw a bunch of cards. Flooded Strand, Serum Visions. So start with... I wish we had another Time Warp. Start with Path, Scavenging Ooze. I might have to use my other part, the Water Veil, here. In fact, I almost certainly do. Okay, opponent eats Time Warp like they should. And Cryptic. Yep. I could try and rely on Cryptic to save me. I don't think it's going to work, though. The problem is we need part the Water Veil to win quickly. Otherwise, we have to Snapcaster Beatdown, which is very difficult, or... So play an island. The problem is we need to Cryptic tap, and then we can't do anything else. Yeah, I have to part the Water Veil here. If we had gotten game 1, I could take a risk, but unfortunately, can't do that here. Mystic Sanctuary. Alright. Start Serum Visions. We draw Teferi. Teferi, Serum Visions bottom. Serum Visions again. Oh man, what is happening? Play Mystic Sanctuary. Put Aether Gust on top. Pass the turn. Oh no. Oh no! Discard Prairie Stream. Opponent draws a bajillion extra cards. They play Strangle Root. They go to combat. Cryptic, tap everything and draw. Okay. All while we're in combat, we're going to Giga Drowse 2 of their black sources. We are going to have to fight really hard for this one. If our opponent did not have Skoos, we could have just Mystic Sanctuaried that Time Warp and we would have been fine. Okay. Opponent passes to second main. Black-green for a Wall of Roots. Adding green for birds. We untap. Draw Path, Time Warp, Exhaustion. Well, Flooded Strand. Play Teferi. Time Warp ourself. Fetch up Mystic Sanctuary. Put Time Warp on top of our deck. Bounce Wall of Roots. Draw Time Warp, untap. We draw Polluted Delta. Path, Hollowed Fountain. Time Warp ourself. Uptick Teferi. Polluted Delta. Mystic Sanctuary. Time Warp on top of the deck. Path Birds. Exhaust our opponent. Untap. We have to we have to Snapcaster Beats or Jace Alt. Time Warp, Teferi. Uptick Teferi. Play out new Teferi. Bounce Dictate. Play Flooded Strand. Time Warp ourself. Get our last Mystic Sanctuary. Putting Time Warp on top. Man, maybe we should be playing Approach of the Second Sun. Discard Hollowed Fountain. We probably don't need that. Untap, we draw Time Warp and Temporal. Uptick Teferi. Cast Temporal Mastery. I put Snapcaster on the bottom of my deck a long time ago, didn't I? Alright, untap. Discard Howling Mine. We untap. Draw Flooded Strand and a Hollowed Fountain. Uptick Teferi. Cast Temporal Mastery. I had to choke myself off drawing new cards, because otherwise we would be in trouble. Discard Flooded Strand. Okay, we draw Jace. So there is technically our way to win. Play Hollowed Fountain tapped. Uptick Teferi. Play Jace. Uptick on my opponent. We will not put Colony Garden on the bottom. Path Messenger. Time Warp ourself. Okay. Untap. We will Miracle Temporal Mastery. Okay. Cast it for a Time Walk. Draw Misty. Uptick on my opponent. We will put Dralf's Messenger to the bottom. Downtick Teferi. Unsummon Noble Hierarch. Aether Gust. Strangle Root. Because we want the Strangle Roots back in the deck. Aether Gust. Strangle Root. Oh man, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. We can flash Dictate to force them to draw extra cards for the Jace ult. Time Warp ourself, so we have 2 extra turns in queue. Okay, we untap. We draw Island, Time Warp. Uptick to Fairy, uptick Jace. We will put Strangle Rootgeist on the bottom. Play an Island, Time Warp ourself. Opponent is exhausted, so they will not be able to play cards for 2 turns in a row, which I think means we can actually kill them with Jace ult. Oh man, but we are going to have to play so fast for game 3. Play me Kokoro, uptick to Fairy, uptick Jace. We will not put Twilight Mire on the bottom. Pass the turn. Next turn, we untap, we draw to Fairy, Snapcaster, uptick Jace on our opponent. Twilight Mire stays on top. Down tick to Fairy, unsummon Dictate. We draw Exhaustion. Snapcaster Mage for Time Warp. Target ourself. Play to Fairy. Uptick to Fairy. Okay. We untap. We draw 1 card. Okay. Ult Jace. Opponent goes to 5 cards in library. And I think if we flash 3 Dictates, we can kill our opponent. I'm pretty sure we exhausted along the way. I'm like 99% sure we did. I think we should probably still exhaust, though, just to be safe. Uptick to Fairy. Pass the turn. No attacks. We need to draw no extra cards here. So our opponent draws 1, and they pass. So we activate Mikokoro, draw Serum Visions, untap, draw an island, play this, unsummon Snapcaster. Snapcaster, target Exhaustion, exhaust our opponent, play Dictate, play Dictate, play Dictate, play Howling Mine, F6. Put a million triggers on the stack. Oh man, the Howling Mine lethal. Oh, that was grueling, but we got there. Okay, so now we can think. Having to use both parts there made that really difficult. We should be able to win the next game faster as long as we get to keep one of them in the deck. We might want Brazen Borrower. I don't think we need to play a Silence. Brazen Borrower is a cheap answer to, like, Skoos, as well as an additional clock. Is that better than Giga Drowse? Or is it better than Aether Gust? Aether Gust there was super nice for the Jace victory, because we could put the cards back in their deck rather than in their hand. I don't think that's going to be relevant again. Maybe I do want a Supreme Verdict, but they have so many Undying creatures and we can do nothing about it. I think we're fine on the game plan that we're on, but we have to play quickly. That is what we need to stress here. I'm so glad we found that line to win the game, because we definitely didn't have enough Time Warps left to just beat down with Snapcaster. And we had exactly enough cards in deck, and that was why I was unsummoning those mines when I was. I was like, we're going to draw too many cards otherwise. Alright, opponent gets to play first, which is going to be a big deal. They are 8 minutes ahead of us on the clock. On the draw, this hand is potentially good. The problem is if we don't get a second land immediately, we're basically screwed. We have 2 draws to do it. I think we get a mulligan. Alright, well this hand is very slow. We have a Jace, which we could use to set up a Temporal Mastery. I'm going to try keeping it. We've had so much trouble with drawing lands that I kind of just want to have access to them. We have tons of good top decks, like Serum Visions to help us set up stuff, or if we Miracle a Temporal, which we're not going to because we just put one at the bottom, but opponent did mulligan to 5 and starts tap land, which is amazing news for us. The more time we have, the better. The problem is I'm going to play this Howling Mine and probably dig them out of their own mulligans. Okay, second land for our opponent. They're starting with a Zulaport Cutthroat, which is a little bit of a problem, but thankfully it's not a fast clock on its own. Play an island. We will play Howling Mine. Pass the turn. Hopefully our opponent does not have a Reclamation Sage. Okay, opponent attacks for 1 to start. We go to 9. If we Miracle a Temporal, I think this game is over. Eldritch Evolution. Okay, they get to tutor. Rec Sage. Alright, so opponent basically got that card for free. We untap. We draw Serum Visions, so start with a Serum Visions. We draw another Howling Mine. Dictate of Krufix Time Warp on top. Second Time Warp I think is going to go to the bottom. Dictate I will keep. And we're going to play a Plains in case we draw and want to play... what is it called? Prairie Stream. Okay, opponent has 5 cards in hand, 3 mana untapped. We have a Dictate of Crufix on top of our library, but we only have 2 blue mana, which means we can't cast Serum Visions along with Dictate. Opponent plays a Geralf's Messenger, meaning that they will have 5 mana, and if I play Jace, Jace is going to die. So we're going to save Jace. We take 2, we go to 14, we untap, opponent plays Nurturing Peatland. Okay, so we draw Dictate, and next card is Path. Path is nice, because it means we can hit Geralf's Messenger on our opponent's turn. They can't Veil of Summer through that. They do get to draw an extra card here, which is potentially very dangerous. But we just need a land, and we will be time warping our way to victory. Okay, opponent plays Wall of Roots, which thankfully for us is not an offensive creature. I think the question this game is going to be whether or not we have the time to do the full combo. Okay, opponent plays a Young Wolf and a Strangle Root. Okay, so opponent goes to combat. They attack with everything. Path Messenger. They get a land. Oh man, Urborg makes it so difficult for us to actually tap mana. That's super annoying. Okay, we take 4. Okay, we untap, we draw 3 cards. Teferi, Prairie Stream, which is super good. We have the second basic here. Play Prairie Stream. Time Warp ourself. Oh man, this is so slow. I might have to try restarting the client now. Okay, we untap. We draw Dictate, Serum Visions, Flooded Strand. Play Mystic Sanctuary. Time Warp on top. Serum Visions. Draw Time Warp. Bottom. Bottom. Time Warp ourself. Oh, that Urborg. I think I can hold down M to autopay, actually. Okay, we draw Mystic Sanctuary, Flooded Strand, Hollowed Fountain. Mystic Sanctuary, Time Warp on top, Serum Visions, draw Time Warp, part the Water Veil on top, Time Warp ourself. Okay, untap. We untap, draw part, Time Warp, Teferi, Time Warp ourself, play Flooded Strand, fetch Mystic Sanctuary, put Time Warp on top of the deck. We will be able to use our Teferis to unsummon our opponent's last blockers, and because we have Teferi, our opponent will not be able to play a kill spell, such as a Fatal Push on our land. Downtick Wall of Roots. Draw Time Warp. Opponent adds green mana for some reason. Sacks Nurturing Peatland. Okay, we no longer have to worry about removal. Okay, next turn. We untap. We draw with Howling Mine and Dictate. Draw Temporal Mastery. Time Warp ourself. Frickin' Urborg. Flooded Strand. Fetch with Flooded Strand. Get Mystic Sanctuary. Time Warp on top. New Teferi. Keep the new one. Unsummon Young Wolf. Draw Time Warp. Next turn. Discard Flooded Strand. We have no more Mystic Sanctuaries left. We untap. We draw land. Snapcaster. Land. Play land. Awaken the Plains. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Next turn. Discard Hollowed Fountain. Untap. Draw Time Warp. Island. Part. Play Island. Awaken. Snow-covered Plains. I guess autopay no longer works. Blue. Blue. Colorless. White. Go to combat. Attack for 12. Get our opponent down to 2. We untap and take the final swing. Discard Hollowed Fountain. We untap. Draw a bunch of cards. Go to combat. Kill our opponent. Oh, man. If I had lost to the Yogg meme deck, I would have never heard the end of it. But thankfully, we made it. Oh, had to dig deep to find that Jace win, but we got there. I'll see you guys in round 4. Alrighty, round 4. Here we go. Play first. I think this hand is actually okay to keep. I believe I restarted the client. If it's lagging super hard, I might restart again. Okay. Start Hollowed Fountain. Untapped. Oh yeah, we gotta restart. Serum Visions. Draw Time Warp. Force of Negation to Teferi. Force of Negation to the bottom. Teferi to the top. And I will be right back. Okay. You're back. Ish. Magic, come on. God, they gotta fix Moto. Alright. Opponent starts Scalding Tarn. Draw Teferi. Play Prairie Stream. Pass the turn. Hopefully we can get a Giga Drowse in and our opponent doesn't have like a Force of Negation or something, so that we can resolve a Teferi. That'd be sweet. Raugrin Triome looks like it's probably control. They play a Snow-Covered Forest into a Wrenn and 6. Alright. Well, I mean, we can just play Teferi and tick up. That shouldn't be a problem then. Okay, we draw Island, which is great. Play Teferi. Hopefully no Force. No Force. Uptick Teferi, because if we downtick, Wrenn and 6 can just kill him. Pass the turn, F6. Okay. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn. Let's see what they get. Breeding Pool. Their own Teferi, so no more Giga Drowse. Okay. They pick up their land. We draw an island. Play me Kokoro, tick up Teferi. Pass the turn. Island is super good here because that means our 5th land can cast Time Warp and our 6th land can put it back on top of our deck. My opponent not having ramp to play out like Uro or Omnath early is super good. Okay. Opponent plays a Misty Rainforest and cracks it, probably going to go get black mana. Ah, Hallowed Fountain, okay. Or no, they don't need black mana, what am I thinking? Okay, they get a tap land. They play Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. They gain some life, put a Temple Garden into play, and they pass. Okay, they uptick Teferi. So, on my opponent's end step, we will activate me Kokoro, Hallowed Fountain. Opponent discards to hand size. We draw an island, play an island, uptick Teferi, Time Warp ourself. Okay, untap, we draw Cryptic, Mystic Sanctuary, Time Warp on top, downtick Teferi, no targets, draw Time Warp ourself, untap, we draw Hallowed Fountain, uptick Teferi, play an island, Temporal Mastery, untap, we draw Giga Drowse. So we can Giga Drowse 4 of their lands if we bounce Teferi with Cryptic. We're going to try drawing with Teferi first. Okay, Exhaustion. Exhaustion is a big deal. So we play Hallowed Fountain untapped. Exhaust our opponent. And repulse Teferi. We draw Howling Mine. Okay. Okay, opponent untaps. They pick up Flooded Strand. They play Scalding Tarn. If they have Lightning Bolt, that would be the worst thing in the world. And it looks like they do. Okay, that's really bad. Because now my opponent might have Force of Negations and such. We untap, we draw Giga Drowse. So, shock Hallowed Fountain. Play Howling Mine. And we are going to Giga Drowse all of their permanents on their upkeep. Opponent can alt Wrenn and 6, which would be a big deal. So we Giga Drowse, will replicate 6 times. Okay. Well, that was the danger of letting Teferi get so low, but we needed all the extra draws. And we'll tap Wrenn and 6 for fun. No sense in stacking 2 Giga Drowses on any one particular permanent here, I don't think. Opponent can play at instant speed if they have something they can play at instant speed. Okay, they let all their permanents get tapped. They get to draw an extra card. So I would like to draw another Teferi, that would be great. Opponent alts Wrenn and 6, plays Scalding Tarn, leaves up Scalding Tarn, just in case they want to cast a Lightning Bolt, which is completely understandable. We untap, we draw Howling Mine and Mystic Sanctuary. So, Mystic Sanctuary, putting Time Warp on top of our deck, and we are going to try and Time Warp here. Opponent having Giga Drowse is really bad, but having Force of Negation would be really bad. But if this resolves, we can land another Howling Mine. Perfect. Probably no Force of Negation. Okay. Untap, we'll draw 3 cards. One of which is Teferi, another of which is Time Warp. So we will start with the most important spell. Play Teferi. Uptick Teferi. Our opponent can no longer cast spells right now. So we will Snapcaster here, because we want to start the beats. Snapcaster for Time Warp. Time Warp ourself. Okay. Untap. We draw. Dictate Snow-Covered Plains and another Teferi. So, downtick Teferi, no targets. See what we draw. Island. Play an island. Play Dictate. Time Warp ourself. Draw an extra card. Part the Water Veil. Perfect. Get in for 2. Go to our next turn. We untap. Draw a million cards. Okay. Play a land. Uptick to Fairy. Awaken the Plains. Go to combat. Attack for 8. When it goes to 5, we untap. Draw a bunch of cards. And get there. Whew! Alright. So, versus our opponent's deck, what do we want to do here? I'm going to take out Jace. Jace being another win condition does help, but the problem is he gets absolutely destroyed by pretty much any deck playing lightning bolts, especially one with as much direct damage as our opponents. I think we want another free counterspell in the form of Force of Negation. I don't know if we want Silence. It may or may not be better than Giga Drowse. Cryptic could be a little difficult and might be easier to justify a Silence over a Cryptic, but having the permanent bounce is pretty important. I don't know if I would cut Path for Silence because we might want an answer to an onboard Uro, even though it shouldn't be that big of a deal. I think we're going to try it just like this. Aether Gust could be good here, but it doesn't hit an opposing Teferi. Brazen Borrower would. I actually think I'm going to bring in a Brazen Borrower and drop a Giga Drowse, and we'll try it like this. Alright, opponent gets to be on the play this time. No free counterspell, 1 Mystic Sanctuary in hand. An opponent gets to be on the play. This hand is entirely dependent on what we draw. I think we're fine to keep it, though. Okay, opponent did mulligan to 6, which is a good sign for us. They start Raugern Triome. We draw Teferi Time Raveler, so we just need to draw white mana. Preferably a Force would be great, too. Opponent will only have 2 mana next turn. Is it worth trying to Miracle a Temporal Mastery? I don't think so. I think we need to race to white mana here. Pass the turn. We could have set up a Temporal Mastery, but that would have been 2 turns away, and had my opponent played Teferi, we'd be absolutely screwed because we wouldn't be able to Miracle. Force of Negation makes me feel way better about myself, so we're going to play a Serum Visions here. We draw Temporal Mastery, which is a bit unfortunate. Giga Drowse Cryptic to the bottom. Just looking for that white mana. I will absolutely force a Teferi if my opponent plays Teferi, and we have a Temporal Mastery, which would be okay to pitch. When I got a Ketria Triome, they play an island, and they pass the turn. Okay, I would really, really like white mana, please. Well, Brazen Borrower. I have no choice but to play a Mystic Sanctuary tapped here, which really sucks. That's 2 Mystic Sanctuaries we can't use while comboing off. Okay, opponent untaps. If we at least had untapped mana, we could have tried to cast a Dictate here. Okay, opponent plays a Snow-Covered Forest and passes. The cool thing about Force of Negation is we can protect our Dictate with it, too. Polluted Delta. So play Polluted Delta, pass the turn. We now have access to Cryptic Force, which is pretty good. Okay, opponent plays a Flooded Strand. They play Renin 6. This is pretty good bait for a Force of Negation. They played a land. I could just Brazen Borrower this. It's not that big of a deal. I'm going to let this resolve. It's Teferi I'm really scared of. Okay, they pick up Misty, and they pass. So, flash Dictate of Kruphix on their end step. They're going to Mystically Dispute this. Okay, I think it's time for Force of Negation, pitching Temporal Mastery. Okay. Dictate resolves. Crack Polluted Delta. Get a Prairie Stream tapped, because we don't need the mana now. Untap, we get to draw 2 cards. Card number 1 is an Exhaustion. Card number 2 is a Mystic Sanctuary. I think the play is to Mystic Sanctuary, putting Force of Negation on top. Exhaust, and then leave up Borrower Bounce. Is that right? We need to play Mystic Sanctuary this turn, so I think that's the way to go here. Exhaust our opponent. They will have 3 untapped mana because they can fetch with Flooded Strand, and they can also play the Misty that they're holding. The biggest problem would be if our opponent plays a Teferi now, but I don't think Cryptic was any safer. I think this was the safer play. This way, if my opponent plays a Teferi, they have to tap out for it. They crack Misty. They get a Forest. They pick Misty up, and they pass. Alright, let's start Borrower Bounce, Petty Theft. It resolves. We untap. Draw Force. Draw Island. Play Island. Play Teferi. We can get through 1 counterspell with Force of Negation. Opponent pitches Omnath to Force of Negation. Force of Negation, their Force of Negation. And they Mana Leak ours. Okay, well we know they're holding Wrenn and 6 land. But they get to draw 2 cards, which is a problem. Oh, Mystic Sanctuary, okay. That's a problem. I still think that was our best shot at resolving Teferi there. If we draw like Teferi land, we'll have Teferi with Cryptic backup, which is pretty sweet. So opponent plays Wrenn and 6, picks up Flooded Strand, plays Misty. So they're holding a Flooded Strand. We untap. We draw and will Miracle Temporal Mastery. I should have technically drawn before I cast this. So we Miracle. I don't think my opponent should fight over this. If they do, I will Cryptic to protect it, I think. Okay, we draw an island. Play an island. Cast Borrower. Okay. Pass to our next turn. We untap. We draw Time Warp and Time Warp. Go to combat. Attack Wrenn and 6. Wrenn and 6 goes down to 1. Time Warp ourself. This should almost certainly bait the force from our opponent. It does make us go shields down. Okay. I don't know how many Mystic Sanctuaries my opponent plays, but any more than 2, actually really any more than 1, it's a problem. Okay. I don't think my opponent will sacrifice Wrenn and 6 to deal with Brazen Borrower, especially in a deck that plays Bolt. If we can draw Teferi land, Teferi will bait the force, we can take an extra turn and then probably be okay. Okay, opponent plays a Flooded Strand. 5 mana. Big Teferi. They kill Brazen Borrower and they uptick Teferi. Okay? Big Teferi is kind of a problem. Okay, we untap. We draw and will Miracle Temporal Mastery, stacking the triggers correctly this time. We draw Snapcaster. Attempt a Miracle. Okay, it resolves. We will attempt to resolve a Time Warp here. This should force my opponent to force, because now we'll be taking 2 extra turns in a row, if they don't. I could have also attempted a Cryptic Bounce and Draw, which may have been worth it. The more draws our opponent lets us have, the potential for more interaction we have with what they're doing. Okay. So opponent exiles our Time Warp, which means we can't Snapcaster it back, meaning that our best Snapcaster target at the current moment is Exhaustion. We untap. We draw Dictate and Teferi. Play Teferi. I would really, really like to draw a land here, so I'm going to downtick. No targets. Draw Giga Drowse. I could bounce Teferi, but that doesn't really do anything. I just think I pass turn and leave up Cryptic. If we had drawn a land and could, like, Snapcaster Exhaustion there, that would have been great. My opponent can tuck Teferi with their Teferi. Yep, that makes sense. They play a Misty Rainforest. They play Ashiok. I think we will try and counter draw here. Ashiok milling over Teferi is pretty bad for us. And our opponent has Veil, meaning that we only draw 1 card, which is a Flooded Strand, which is useless to us now. They mill all of the things we could Snapcaster as well. That's kind of a big deal. We untap, we draw a useless Misty and an island. Play an island. Big Giga Drowse doesn't really do it here. We might have to end up trying to, like, awaken a Flooded Strand. Alright, pass the turn. We'll try and Giga Drowse all their lands at their end step. After they get their untap trigger. And they mill Mikokoro, Dictate, Serum Visions, and Force. They get a zombie. They play Teferi Time Raveler. I'm going to replicate 4 times. Us being on the play for the final game is quite an advantage, so hopefully we can get there. Okay, opponent's going to let this go through, at least the trigger, and we'll hit the Flooded Strand as well. Opponent can float mana if they want. They crack Flooded Strand, they get an island, make a zombie. Okay. So we flash our other Dictate, so that way they can't just unsummon one of them. Hopefully. Okay, opponent cracks Misty, they get a Breeding Pool. Untapped. 2 mana, Mana Leak. Nope. Can't pay for that. Unsummon Dictate. Okay, they untap 2 lands. We untap. We draw an island, so play an island. Awaken, part the Water Veil, because this is basically the only thing we can do. If they counter this, we're pretty much game over. Oh, hey, it worked. Next turn, we draw Exhaustion. Snapcaster Mage. Targeting Gigadrowse. Gigadrowse here. Replicate twice. No, we have to replicate... Oh, hang on. Gigadrowse the zombies. We have to replicate twice. Play Flooded Strand. Go to combat. Attack our opponent down to 6. Hit them with an Exhaustion. Pass the turn. Opponent upticks Teferi, so they'll have 4 mana. Downtick, or upticks other Teferi, and then probably downticks Ashiok. Milling, Exhaustion, Part the Water Veil, Hollowed Fountain, Cryptic Command, and Flooded Strand. So my opponent will have 4 mana, 5 mana at their end step. They make a zombie. That makes sense. So they untap 2 lands. We get 1 draw. It's a Plains, which is really highly unfortunate. So go to combat. Attack our opponent. Attack Teferi Time Raveler. Okay. They block the snow-covered island. We kill Teferi Time Raveler. We can now play at instant speed again. Play a Plains, pass the turn. But now my opponent has all the mana in the world. We'll attempt to flash a Dictate on their end step, and if we don't draw exactly what we need to win, I will concede immediately to try and preserve as much of my clock as I can. Unfortunately, I think I needed that Gigadrowse. They plus Teferi. They play Omnath. They draw a card. I don't have a Cyclonic Rift. Both Cryptics are in the grave, so we can't just Cryptic tap. They gain life. Alright. Opponent attacks for 4, that's fine. We go to 15. Flash Dictate. Opponent shouldn't counter this, they should counter whatever we're going to do with it. So, okay. We untap. We draw Island, Time Warp. Time Warp? Okay. That's game. Okay, we gotta play real fast. Real fast. Did I miss having the 3rd Gigadrowse? A little bit. Silence. Oh, I don't know about Silence. Silence Teferi is pretty good. Maybe that's better. Cryptic is really hard to resolve. I think dropping it for a Silence is fine. Temporal Mastery is also, like, kind of iffy, because if our opponent plays Teferi, trying to Temporal Mastery is really, really difficult. I think dropping it for another Silence is also fine. Okay. Try it like this. We will play first. I will keep this. Start Island, Serum Visions. We will not reveal Temporal Mastery. We do need more islands. We also probably need plains. I want to put the plains on top, the island on the bottom. Pass the turn, F6. We're going to be doing a lot of F6ing on our opponent's turns here. Opponent starts Scalding Tarn, draw plains, play Howling Mine, F6. Okay. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn, gets a Ketria Triome, draws an extra card, plays a Scalding Tarn. We draw Dictate, Island, perfect. Play the island, pass the turn. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn, gets a Raugrin Triome. They untap. They play an island, and they pass. Dictate on their end step. When a mana leaks, that's fine. We untap. Draw Flooded Strand, Dictate, play Flooded Strand, pass the turn. Okay, opponent untaps. Plays a Scalding Tarn. Flash Dictate. Opponent mana leaks again. Crack Flooded Strand, get a Hollowed Fountain tapped. We untap. Draw Force of Negation and Silence. Play me Kokoro. Attempt to Time Warp. I probably should restart the client, but I don't know. I don't know how long that's going to take, and it might not save me more time than what's currently happening. We can F6 through the rest of this turn, though. Opponent Mystic Sanctuaries, they're going to put Mana Leak back on top of their deck. I guess if they had Remand, that would be pretty punishing. They Veil of Summer to draw Mana Leak. They let Time Warp resolve. Time Warp gets exiled? Oh, they force. Okay. I didn't understand what was happening because I F6'd. I hope this game doesn't come down to clock. It might. Opponent plays a Misty, cracks Misty, gets a Mystic Sanctuary. They're going to put Force of Negation on top of their deck. So we know they're going to be holding like multiple counter spells here. Okay. Teferi, Force of Negation, pitching Temporal Mastery. Nice. We untap. Draw Force of Negation, Giga Drowse, Mystic Sanctuary. Put Force of Negation on top of our deck. We are going to attempt to part the Water Veil here. Actually, they're holding Mana Leak. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to try and tap them out. We know that they're holding Force of Negation now. So if we have a critical turn where we need to resolve a spell, we have Silence. Okay, opponent plays a Forest. Okay, on their end step, Giga Drowse, Replicate 3 times. Ketria Triome, Raugrin, Island, Mystic. This may not technically do anything. We need a cheap Time Warp, like Temporal Mastery here would be great. There's only one left in the deck, though. Okay, Exhaustion might work. Exhaust our opponent. Okay. Opponent does have Mana Leak Force Mana up. Pass the turn. Opponent gets to draw multiple cards. We play a Misty. Pass the turn. On their end step, Mikokoro, draw us each a card. We draw Teferi, which is excellent. Opponent has to discard to hand size. They discard a Forest. We draw Time Warp. And a Brazen Borrower. Silence. I wish we'd drawn a land, because then we could silence Teferi and Force. Hardcast. Opponent lets Silence resolve. Okay, play Teferi. Teferi uptick. Pass the turn, we have multiple forces. Opponent draws multiple cards. 3 mana. Opponent engineered explosives on 3, which we will force. So force pitching Brazen Borrower. Have we lost apart the Water Veil yet? We have not. Okay, opponent cracks Misty. They get a Hollowed Fountain. And a Stomping Ground. Growth Spiral, that's fine. Get a Temple Garden untapped. Omnath. Okay, they get to draw a card, but that should be it. We untap. I think we got there, we just have to play supremely fast. Okay, we draw Teferi. Bounce Omnath. Draw Path. Time Warp, target ourself. Untap. We have to hit a good number of lands, like right in a row. Okay, Polluted Delta. Uptick Teferi. Play Polluted Delta. Crack Polluted Delta. Get a Mystic Sanctuary. Put Time Warp on top of our deck. Exhaust our opponent. Play new Teferi. Keep the new one. Uptick. We're doing this to play around land Lightning Bolt. We F6 through our opponent's turn. Opponent plays Field of the Dead, gets a zombie. Okay. They discard to hand size. Oh man, Moto, why are you lagging so hard? Okay. Play an island. Unsummon the zombie. We draw Dictate. Time Warp ourself. Play Dictate. We should have enough time. We don't have to attack very much, we just need to attack. Okay, we untap. Porter, go lay down. I'll play with you in a minute. We draw Prairie Stream. Okay, play Prairie Stream. Uptick Teferi. Awaken the Plains. Quickly take our next turn. We untap. Draw Mystic Sanctuary. Teferi, Teferi. Uptick Teferi. Mystic Sanctuary. Time Warp on top of our deck. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Stop on second main. Draw with me, Kokoro. Time Warp ourself. Untap. Draw a bunch of cards. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Oh my god, there's the round. Oh, so stressful. But we made it. I'm going to restart the client, and I'll see you guys in round 5. Alright, round 5, we get to be on the play. Yeah, we'll keep. Okay, so we will start Polluted Delta, Fetch, Shock Hollowed Fountain, Serum Visions to draw Howling Mine, which is great, Force of Negation to the bottom, Island to the top. Pass the turn. Alright, opponent plays a Breeding Pool tapped, play an island, play a Howling Mine, pass the turn. Opponent gets to draw an extra card. It's probably Uro again, I wouldn't doubt. Opponent plays an island and passes. They discard Field of Ruin. We draw Mystic Sanctuary and another Teferi. Okay. Feel pretty safe about running out this Teferi then. When it remands it. Okay, pass the turn. If this is Uro / Omnath, the critical part here will be just resolving a Teferi. Okay. We untap, draw Exhaustion. We'll play Flooded Strand. Attempt to resolve Teferi. They could have Force. Yep. Opponent untaps, draws an extra card. This is the bad thing about playing a Howling Mine before we can play Teferi, but we also need to get Howling Mine under counters. Opponent shocks. The Assassin's Trophy Howling Mine, that's fine, we'll get an island. Let's see what they do. Okay, crack Flooded Strand, get a Hollowed Fountain. Tapped, untap, draw Howling Mine. Play Mystic Sanctuary, but Force of Negation on top. Attempt to resolve Teferi, we can get through a Mana Leak or a Remand. Okay. Do they have another Force? They do not. Uptick Teferi, pass the turn. Alright, that's the first critical point down. Opponent is going to Snapcaster Assassin's Trophy. We shuffle away our Force of Negation. Okay, they play a Polluted Delta. We draw Time Warp. So, Time Warp ourselves. Hopefully our opponent is out of free counter spells. I feel like they would have used one on Teferi if they had one. Okay. Mystic Sanctuary, Time Warp on top of the deck. Play Howling Mine. Nice! Okay, we untap. Draw Time Warp, one unknown. It's an island. Play an island, Time Warp ourselves. Exhaust our opponent. Untap. We draw Cryptic, Prairie Stream. Play Prairie Stream, pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays a Mystic Sanctuary, putting Force of Negation on top of their deck. They're going to crack Polluted Delta first. Okay, Force of Negation on top of their deck. They go to combat. They attack for 2. Did they draw Force of Negation with the trigger? I'm gonna bounce Mystic Sanctuary and draw a card. Perfect. Okay, we draw Flooded Strand and Dictate. Mystic Sanctuary. Put Time Warp on top. Serum Visions to draw it. Land to the bottom, land to the bottom. Time Warp ourself. Flash Dictate. Okay, opponent Mana Leaks Dictate, that's fine. I mean, it's not great, but it's fine. We untap, draw Land Path. That's not good. Opponent's gonna have Force now. So pass the turn. Opponent untaps, gets to draw Force, one unknown. Plays a River of Tears, goes to combat. Attacks for 2, we will path. Okay, sack Flooded Strand, get Mystic Sanctuary. Time Warp on top. We're not really going to be able to cast it, though. We untap, draw Time Warp, Serum Visions. Cast Serum Visions. Draw Dictate. Serum Visions to the bottom, Force of Negation to the top, play an island, pass the turn. Okay, opponent untaps. We know they're holding at least Force of Negation. They play a land, pass to their end step, Flash Dictate. Okay, Archmage's Charm. We untap, draw Force of Negation, Prairie Stream. Okay, this is our best chance, Time Warp. Opponent casts Force, we cast Force. Time Warp resolves. Play Prairie Stream. Untap. We draw Flooded Strand, Mikokoro. Oh, why can't we have both? Alright, play Mikokoro. Draw an extra card right now. It's a land. Fuck. I don't mean to curse, I'm sorry. But, opponent has 3 extra cards we didn't know about now. They Mystic Sanctuary, they put Archmage's Charm on top of their deck. Okay, they get to draw Archmage's Charm. So we know they're holding at least 1 hard counter. We untap, we draw Teferi, and Cryptic. Play Teferi. Opponent Archmage's Charm. Cryptic Archmage's Charm. Archmage's Charm, Cryptic command. Okay. Play Flooded Strand. Fetch Mystic Sanctuary. I think we have just enough mana for this. So if my opponent has a Permissions counterspell, we're probably screwed. Time Warp on top. Draw Time Warp. Opponent gets to draw a card, which is dangerous. We've hit like everything but our Time Warps, which is absurd. I really wish we could have landed that Teferi. Time Warp ourselves. No interaction, opponent. They have a mana leak. Okay. Maybe I should have waited for a turn, but... Okay, opponent cycles Lonely Sandbar. We're both down to really low numbers of cards in deck. So most of our Time Warps are still in the deck, and we're to the point that we can almost cast multiple Time Warps in a turn. The problem is we've only seen one of my opponent's Force of Negations as far as I know. And they could very easily have multiple counterspells at this point. So they're going to be reanimating Uro here. Okay, this gave them 2 extra draws, which is probably just all counterspells. They play a tap land. Alright, we untap, we need several good draws. Right in a row. Part the Water Veil is good. We might just have to try it, unfortunately. Play an island. Awaken the Plains. This does turn on my opponent's creature removal. Cryptic. Counter draw. Okay. Pass the turn. Oh, man. We would be having such an easy time if Force of Negation wasn't a card. Okay, opponent gets a Field of the Dead. Hits us for 6. Another land. Okay. End step. Activate Mikokoro. Giga Drowse. Untap. We draw Dictate, Giga Drowse, play an island, pass the turn. We can kind of delay a little bit. Opponent Factor Fiction. Alright, Jace are the rest. They take 4 cards. Growth Spiral. They untap. They draw multiple cards. Beginning of combat. Replicate it 11 times. Okay. Zombie, zombie, zombie. Uro, zombie, 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 Uro, zombie, 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 and Uro. Opponent can cast a bunch of counter spells if they want to. we're just trying to... we actually might be able to mill our opponent out, which would be really, really silly. Opponent's debating about whether or not they want to fight over this. They are going to Archmage's Charm the single copy of Giga Drowse. Okay, tap, 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 counter, force. Okay, Giga Drowse, replicate twice. I want it tapped, damn it. Alright, same targets, same targets. F6. Sweet. Problem is we can't activate Mikokoro this turn, which does suck. Opponent plays a land, cracks the land, Watery Grave untapped, cracks Polluted Delta, fails to find, Assassin's Trophy, Howling Mine, nothing left, upkeep, Flash Dictate. Opponent has 6 cards left in hand. We draw Temporal Mastery, which we will reveal. Draw an extra card. Okay. Attempt to resolve Temporal Mastery. Opponent has Snapcaster. For Force of Negation. It's possible I should have tried to resolve Teferi first. That may actually be a mistake. Okay, opponent counters. Play Teferi. Bounce a zombie. Time Warp. Time Warp ourselves. Both of us draw. Cast Serum Visions. Temporal Mastery. Okay, Jace on top, Temporal Mastery on top of Jace. Untap. Reveal Temporal. Miracle. Draw Jace. Play Jace. Uptick to Fairy. Unsummon Uro. Draw an extra card. It's a Time Warp. Giga Drowse replicate once, just tap their remaining permanents. Next turn. So we have 2 extra turns in queue. We untap, we draw Flooded Strand. Force. Well, that's no good. Brainstorm. Put back. Dictate. Flooded Strand. Untap, or uptick to Fairy. Awaken the Plains. Time Warp ourselves. So we have 2 extra turns in queue. Hit our opponent for 6. We untap, we draw a couple of cards. Brainstorm with Jace. Put back Misty. Exhaust our opponent. I'm fine getting rid of Teferi now. Unsummon Dictate. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 6. Okay. Untap. We draw Misty. I cannot brainstorm with Jace. Unfortunately. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Pass the turn. Thought about Fate Sealing my opponent. Was probably technically correct. Oh, never mind. We just have enough turns in queue. Go to combat. Attack. Well, chalk that one up to games I never thought I was gonna win. Oh, man. That was awesome. Okay. 4th Force in. Probably gonna want Silence. Giga Drowse was actually really good that game. Let's see, what else? What are we doing here? Time to calm down, take our time. Opponent is not playing Teferi, so Temporal Mastery is actually probably vital. I think dropping a Giga Draws for a Force is fine. Exhaustion, I feel like, is not as good. So I think I'm going to drop an Exhaustion for a Silence. And maybe we drop Cryptic for like an Aether Gust or a Silence. I think dropping Cryptic for Silence is actually the way to go. Cryptic is just really hard to resolve versus our opponent's deck. Okay. We have to play fast because we're on the clock, and if it looks like we're not going to win, we're going to have to concede. I will keep this. Start Serum Visions. Draw an Island, Giga Draws to the bottom, Exhaustion to the top, pass the turn. We can set up a Giga Draws Exhaust into Teferi, probably. Play Prairie Stream, pass the turn. Okay, opponent cracks Misty, gets a Zagoth Triome, untaps, plays a Swamp, passes. We draw. Play Snow-Covered Island, pass the turn. Opponent plays a tap land. They probably have a Force, so I'm not going to do anything here. Untap. Draw Mystic Sanctuary. Shock Hollowed Fountain. Cast Serum Visions. Temporal Mastery. Island to the bottom. Dictate on top. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent untaps. Plays a River of Tears. We draw Dictate. Play Mystic Sanctuary. We're not putting anything on top. Okay, nope. We are first going to fight over Dictate on their end step. Opponent Fact or Fiction. We'll give them Remand, Archmage's Charm versus 2 lands, and Assassin's Trophy. Okay? They take the counter spells, but it's only the free counter spells that seem to matter this time. Okay? This is the turn we Giga Drowse, I believe. Replicated 4 times. Need to get them out of their blue mana. Okay? And we need to top deck a land. Actually, we need to top deck, ideally, a Force of Negation, I think. No, that doesn't do it either. On it, remands a Giga Drowse. Okay. On Zagoth Triome, sure. Alright, we untap. I'd like a land. Perfect. Play a land. Attempt to exhaust our opponent. Okay, it worked. Pass to their end step. Mystic Sanctuary, they're putting Remand on top. Flash Dictate. They mana leak. Okay. We untap. Second Teferi would be pretty great. Get an Exhaustion. Or we get a Hollowed Fountain. Try and run out Teferi. See if our opponent has Force. Mystical Dispute. Pay for it. Teferi lands. Down tick and draw. Force. Hollowed Fountain tapped. Pass the turn. We are getting there. We're getting there. Untaps, draws a useless Remand. Opponent flashes in a Snapcaster Mage for Assassin's Trophy. Okay. Attempts to Trophy Teferi. Pitch Temporal Mastery, exile Assassin's Trophy. F6, opponent gets a zombie token. I think they were going to Archmage's Charm to draw cards, but River of Tears taps for black right now. We untap, we get a Flooded Strand. So, uptick Teferi. Path, Snapcaster. When it gets another zombie. Shoot. Snapcaster. I think I have to hit Serum Visions, actually. I could Mystic Sanctuary for Exhaustion first, but Dictate. Flooded Strand to the bottom, Time Warp to the top. Play Flooded Strand, pass the turn. So they are going to be able to kill Teferi. I should have pathed on their turn. That was a mistake. That may have just cost me this match. So they attack and kill Teferi. Flash in a Dictate of Krufix. Let Teferi die. No sense in blocking here at all. Okay, they play a land, they make a token. Draw Time Warp, draw Silence. We know they're holding Archmage's Charm. Silence. Okay, they have to counter it because they're worried it could be a Teferi coming up next. Time Warp. I think they have a Remand, though. Force. Okay, I'm not going to play this one out. We're going to the next game. It's extremely unlikely that we can win that. It's not impossible, and it's possible I should have played that out, because now we only have 8.5 minutes to go for like a full combo. I am going to try to restart the client here.
Hey guys, Editor Kano here. Just wanted to let you know that I am a complete dumbass, and generally I mute when I'm restarting the client so that my auto editor clips out the dead air. But I never unmuted for this last round of the match. Fortunately, it's relatively short. There's not too much going on. We end up losing after a couple of like decent counterspell battles, and
our opponent just has like every answer. They even have like Inquisition after the fact to completely like wits end us, and we never have a time where we have more spells than our opponent has counter spells. So sorry about the editing mix-up, but we'll move on very shortly.
How long have I been muted? Oh no, how long have I been muted? I will have to go through and either redub everything I just said, or oh no, or I'll have to manually edit that one. I think that entire match was muted. No, it might have been just the last game restart. Oh god.